Watch and burn.
Hey everyone, so tonight I want to discuss Chris Dodge's and Dave Witte's East-West Blast Test. Now this was originally released on Slap a Ham. I think it was in the early 2000s, roughly 2000 or 2001. Again, right now I'm wondering why I didn't look into this prior to hitting record, but like always, I didn't, because this is more like a memory test for me than anything else. But yeah, this was originally released on Slap a Ham back, I believe, around 2000, and then a few years later, Relapse would pick this up and re-release it. I'm not sure if the Relapse re-release came with any additional tracks, but I know that there was completely new artwork employed. So it's cool of Relapse to keep this alive, because unfortunately the majority of Slap a Ham's entire, their entire run has pretty much just vanished. If you were lucky enough to scoop up whatever Slap a Ham was releasing at the time, I think their last one was Autophobia. I think it was Autophobia, at least. I think that was Slap a Ham 50 through 54, somewhere in there. So if you were lucky to pick up any of the roughly 50 or so records that they released in their painfully short time on Earth, you could consider yourself incredibly fortunate, because for the most part, records like this, music like this, doesn't usually warrant the need or the desire to have re-releases. So it's very cool of Relapse to pick this up. This record is, this is a wild one, because if memory serves, it was born out of Chris Dodge from Spazz and Dave Witte from, I think he was in Discordance Axie. I think he was, at least, I can't remember. Well, Dave Witte is sort of like a super hardcore power violence grindcore mega drummer, and Dodge and him had wanted to hook up and do like a record together for some time, but seeing as how Witte was way out on the East Coast and Dodge was way out on the West Coast, and neither of them could ever find the time or the cash to come to the other side of the country, as I understand it, Dodge had Witte record 27 drum tracks, where Dave Witte was just left to his own devices to come up with 30 seconds to a minute worth of drum play, and then he would amass these together whenever they were finished, however long it took, and he fired them out to the West Coast, where Dodge added guitar and bass, and sort of, I remember reading an interview with Dodge roughly around the time that this was released, where he discussed being hunched over like an 8-track for months, like making sure everything synced up. It was as far as his guitar and bass guitar work with Dave Witte's drums. And he said it was like a labor of love and he really liked it. But it does sound like a bit of a nightmare. And the songs on here are typically chaotic. Dave Witte is an incredibly talented drummer, and Chris Dodge is an incredibly talented bass player. I think my favorite thing about Chris Dodge's bass is that it reminds me of Klaus Floride's bass from the Dead Kennedys. Dodge, of course, plays it at a much more hurried pace, naturally, seeing as how he's in Spazz. And so it's not identical to the Dead Kennedys, but it's just as chunky, and I like how fluid his bass sounds, and it reminds me of the fluidity found on Klaus's bass back in the Dead Kennedys, because Klaus Floride is just about one of the largest unsung bass players of all time. I mean, him and Darren, their rhythm work and the backbone that they provided for the Kennedys, everything the Kennedys did, in my opinion, has kind of gone largely unsung. And you could at the same time argue the same thing here with both Dave Witte and Chris Dodge. These guys are incredibly talented instrumentalists, and just because of the type of music they chose to focus on, unfortunately, it's just going to kind of get swept under the carpet, because this shit's just too crazy for most people. And while we're talking about crazy, this record is no exception there. There's 27 tracks. This record flies through in what feels like barely 20 minutes. And the songs on here are varied, and there are vocals here and there, certain people from certain other bands that people have heard of pop up from time to time. But these songs are basically not going to be for the masses. These songs are insane, like absolutely crazy. And for somebody like me who's always been into this shit, I found this record to be sort of like one giant roller coaster ride of fun and excitement, where from track to track I didn't know what style they were going to do next, or how they were going to switch it up so cleverly like they did from 30-second song to 30-second song. And yet They managed to keep every single song on this release fresh sounding and vital, and none of them feel rehashed. Like, you know, by the time you get to track 25, they are completely out of ideas, but they just decided to throw in the last few songs anyways. Nothing like that is happening here. Each song has its place, and I loved the artwork, and I really, really respected Relapse for picking this up and re-releasing it a few years later. I wish that would happen for more and more Slap-a-Ham stuff. But I think I will leave it there. So thank you so much for hanging out with me for a few minutes while I discussed Chris Dodge and Dave Witte's East-West Blast Test. Like always, if you like this review, don't forget to do something nice for somebody. You guys are amazing. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good night. I just wanted to say thank you for making it through the entire video. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to remind everyone one more time, even though I've probably already done this in the video that you just watched, to please click the like button as well as the subscribe button, because it helps this channel grow. And thank you for hitting like and subscribe, and we will see you guys really soon.